Most people believe poverty begins in the wallet. I learned the hard way that it begins somewhere far more dangerous. It begins in the mind. You can work harder than everyone around you and still feel stuck. You can wake up early, stay busy all day, and yet end every month with the same quiet fear about money. Not because you are lazy, not because you are incapable, but because certain principles are quietly shaping your decisions every single day. I have met people who earn very little but think like owners. And I have met people who earn a lot but think like victims. The difference is not income. The difference is philosophy. You see, poverty is not just a lack of money. It is a pattern of thoughts, a habit of excuses, a comfort with staying where you are because change feels uncomfortable. And here is the most painful truth. Most people never escape poverty because they never question the principles they are living by. They repeat the same stories. They justify the same habits. They negotiate with the same excuses, year after year. But what if the problem is not your circumstances? What if the problem is the rules you have accepted without realizing it? In this video, I want to share with you 15 principles that quietly keep people poor, not just financially poor, but mentally limited and emotionally drained. And more importantly, I will show you how to break free from them for good. These are not theories. They are timeless success principles rooted in self-discipline, daily habits, and personal responsibility. Principles I wish I had understood much earlier in life. If you recognize even one of these patterns in yourself, do not feel ashamed. Awareness is the beginning of change. Stay with me until the end. Because the final principle is not about money at all. It is about becoming the kind of person who can handle success when it finally arrives. Every life is guided by a story. Not the story you tell others, but the one you whisper to yourself when no one is listening. That story decides what you attempt. It decides what you tolerate. And eventually, it decides what you become. Most people do not stay poor because they lack opportunity. They stay poor because they keep repeating a story that explains why nothing can change. I was not born into money. I am not good with finances. People like me do not get ahead. I will try when things are more stable. These sentences feel harmless. They feel honest, but they are quietly dangerous. Because once you accept a story, your mind will work tirelessly to prove it true. I learned that poverty does not begin with an empty bank account. It begins with a full list of explanations. Explanations that sound logical. Explanations that feel comforting. Explanations that remove responsibility. Jim Rohn often said that we all must choose between two pains. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. But before that choice even appears, there is another decision. The decision of which story you will live by. If your story says life is unfair, you will notice every injustice. If your story says you are behind, you will measure yourself against everyone else. If your story says you are trapped, you will stop looking for doors that are already open. Look around today. Social media has made this worse, not better. You see highlights without context, success without the struggle, freedom without the discipline. And slowly, a new story forms. I am already too late. The system is rigged. There is no point in trying. But here is the truth most people never hear. Your past explains you, but it does not have the right to imprison you. A story is powerful only as long as you keep telling it. The moment you question it, it begins to lose control. Ask yourself this honestly. Is the story you are living protecting you from discomfort or guiding you toward growth? Because growth always demands a new narrative. A narrative where you are no longer a spectator of your life. A narrative where you accept that improvement begins with ownership. Think of your life as a book. You cannot rewrite the earlier chapters, but you can decide what the next chapter stands for. The wealthy mindset does not begin with confidence. It begins with courage. The courage to say, the story I have been telling myself is no longer serving me. Here is the principle you must remember. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of the story you believe. Change the story, and your choices change. Change your choices, and your habits follow. Change your habits, and your future has no option but to shift. And once you see this, you are ready for the next principle. Because after the story comes something even more dangerous. The habit of negotiating with your excuses. Failure rarely announces itself loudly. It whispers. It says, just today. It says you deserve a break. It says you can start again tomorrow. And before you realize it, you are no longer building a life. You are negotiating with it. Most people do not lose their future in one dramatic decision. They lose it through small agreements they make with their excuses. They plan to read, but they negotiate with comfort. They plan to save, but they negotiate with desire. They plan to grow, but they negotiate with fear. And every time they compromise, it feels harmless. Almost reasonable. This is how poverty mindset protects itself. Not through ignorance, but through justification. Jim Rohn taught that success is a few simple disciplines practiced every day. But he also warned that failure is just a few errors in judgment repeated daily. The danger is not the big mistake. The danger is the small one you allow to become normal. Look closely at your daily life. Where are you negotiating? I will wake up early unless I am tired. I will work on my skills unless I feel unmotivated. I will track my money unless this week is stressful. Each excuse sounds logical. Each one feels temporary, but together they form a permanent pattern. Poor thinking is not the absence of ambition. It is the habit of delaying commitment. We live in a time where distraction is praised. Notifications interrupt focus. Entertainment replaces effort. And discipline is treated like punishment instead of freedom. So people negotiate. They bargain away their future for momentary relief. Here's the painful truth. You cannot build wealth while constantly renegotiating your standards. Every negotiation weakens your self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of self-discipline. Think of it like walking down a hill covered in ice. You do not suddenly fall. You slip a little, then a little more, until stopping feels impossible. Excuses work the same way. They lower the bar just enough to feel safe, and then they keep lowering it. Ask yourself this question honestly. Where have you been too kind to your excuses and too harsh on your potential? Because the wealthy mindset is not about being perfect. It is about being consistent. It is the decision that certain things are no longer negotiable. Your learning, your effort, your standards. Here is the principle to remember. You do not rise by motivation. You rise by the rules you refuse to negotiate. Once you stop negotiating with your excuses, something powerful happens. You reclaim authority over your life. And that leads directly to the next principle. Because when excuses disappear, one truth becomes unavoidable. You are responsible. Everything in your life is being driven by one simple question. Who is in control? Most people hand that control away without realizing it. They give it to the economy, to their boss, to their parents, to the past, to circumstances they claim they cannot change. And as long as they do that, wealth will remain out of reach. Ownership is not about blame. It is about power. The moment you accept full responsibility for where you are, you regain the ability to move forward. Until then, every excuse becomes a wall. Jim Rohn taught that we all must take personal responsibility for our lives. Not because life is fair, but because responsibility is the only place where change begins. Poor mindset says this happened to me. Wealth mindset says this is mine to deal with. Same event, two different futures. Think about it. If you believe your problems belong to someone else, you will wait for someone else to fix them. If you believe your life is not yours, you will live like a tenant, not an owner. And tenants do not renovate, they tolerate. Look at the modern world. Technology is changing fast. AI is replacing tasks. Industries are shifting. Some people say, this is unfair. I am a victim of the system. Others say, this is my responsibility to adapt. One group waits, the other learns. Ownership is the line that separates those two groups. Here's the mistake many people make. They confuse ownership with self-blame. Ownership does not say, this is all my fault. Ownership says, this is my move. It is the difference between shame and strength. You cannot grow while pointing fingers. Every finger you point outward takes power away from you. Wealth is not just built with money. It is built with decisions. And decisions require authority. When you own your situation, you gain the authority to change your habits, to change your skills, to change your environment. Ask yourself this question. Where in your life have you been waiting for permission instead of taking ownership? Because the moment you say, this is my responsibility, something shifts inside you. You stop complaining. You stop explaining. You start acting. Here is the principle you must remember. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond. And that response is the first real form of wealth. Once you take ownership, your words begin to matter more, because language is how responsibility turns into reality. And that is exactly where the next principle begins. Every day, you speak thousands of words. Most of them are not spoken out loud. They are spoken inward. And those words are not decoration. They are direction. Your language reveals how you see yourself. And more importantly, it trains your mind on what to expect. People often say, it's just words. But words are never just words. They are instructions repeated until the mind accepts them as truth. Jim Rohn taught that we become what we constantly tell ourselves. Not because life is magical, but because the mind follows familiar commands. Listen closely to how poor thinking sounds. I can't afford that. I'm terrible with money. That's only for lucky people. I'll never catch up. These phrases feel casual, almost automatic, but each one quietly shuts a door. The moment you say, I can't afford it, your mind stops searching. The question is closed. But when you say, how can I afford it, something changes. The door stays open, creativity wakes up, responsibility enters the room. This is not positive thinking. This is productive thinking. Words do not change reality by magic. They change reality by changing behavior. Think of your mind like a piece of software. Every repeated phrase is a line of code. Run the same code long enough, and the system behaves exactly as programmed. Now look at the modern world. People complain constantly about prices, about jobs, about opportunity. And every complaint reinforces an identity of powerlessness. The wealthy mindset is careful with language, not because it is polite, but because it is precise. It avoids absolute statements. It avoids permanent labels. It avoids phrases that remove choice. Ask yourself this: do your words move you toward solutions or toward excuses? Because you cannot speak like a victim and act like a leader at the same time. Here is the principle you must remember. Your words are a mirror. They reflect who you believe you are. If you want to change your results, start by changing your vocabulary. Not tomorrow, today. Choose words that keep options alive. Choose words that assume responsibility. Choose words that invite growth. And if these ideas resonate with you so far, stay connected. Subscribe to Jim Rohn Legacy so you do not miss the next lessons on self-discipline, daily habits, and timeless success principles. Now, here's the deeper layer most people miss. Even with the right words, many still stay poor. Why? Because when pressure arrives, emotions take control. And that is exactly what the next principle is about. Two people can face the same financial pressure and walk away with completely different futures. The difference is not intelligence. It is emotional control. Most financial damage is not caused by lack of knowledge. It is caused by emotional reactions under stress. Fear leads to panic. Panic leads to poor decisions. And poor decisions create long-term consequences. Jim Rohn often reminded us that life and business will test us. Not to see what we know, but to see who we are under pressure. Poor mindset reacts. Wealth mindset responds. When money feels tight, emotions rise. Anxiety whispers urgency. Frustration demands relief. Envy fuels comparison. And suddenly, logic disappears. People overspend to feel better. They quit too early to escape discomfort. They jump from one idea to another, chasing fast relief instead of long-term progress. This is why financial luck is overrated. Luck without emotional discipline is temporary. Look at how many people receive sudden money and lose it within years. The money changed, but the emotional habits did not. We live in an era of constant stimulation. Social media magnifies comparison. News amplifies fear. Every scroll triggers emotion. And an emotional mind is easy to manipulate, easy to distract, easy to exhaust. The wealthy mindset trains emotional resilience. Not by suppressing feelings, but by managing responses. Think of yourself as a pilot flying through turbulence. You do not control the storm, but you must control the aircraft. If you panic, Everyone pays the price. Ask yourself this question honestly. How do you react when money becomes uncertain? Do you rush decisions? Do you avoid looking at numbers? Do you seek comfort instead of clarity? Because the way you behave in financial stress reveals your true discipline. Here is the principle you must remember. Money flows toward those who can stay calm when others lose control. Emotional discipline creates space. Space to think, space to plan, space to choose wisely. Without that space, even the best strategy collapses. The good news is this: emotional control is trainable. It begins with awareness. It grows with pause, and it strengthens with repetition. When pressure comes, slow down instead of speeding up. When fear speaks, listen without obeying. When emotion rises, let logic catch up. Because wealth is not built in moments of excitement. It is built in moments of restraint. And once you learn to control your emotions, a new challenge appears. The temptation of comfort. That is where the next principle begins. Comfort feels harmless. That is why it is dangerous. It does not attack you. It invites you. A little rest, a little entertainment, a small reward for a hard day, and slowly, comfort becomes a habit, then a dependency, then a lifestyle. Jim Rohn warned that we must all suffer from one of two pains: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Comfort is what allows regret to grow quietly. Poor mindset is not built on suffering. It is built on avoidance, avoiding discomfort, avoiding effort, avoiding the tension that growth requires. Look at how modern life is designed. Everything is optimized for ease. Food arrives instantly. Entertainment never ends. Distraction is always one tap away. And discipline begins to feel unnecessary, even cruel. But here is the truth. Anything that grows without discipline eventually collapses. People say they want freedom, but what they really want is comfort. Freedom requires structure. Comfort removes it. Think of comfort like a painkiller. It reduces the symptoms, but it never fixes the problem. In fact, it allows the problem to get worse unnoticed. You feel stressed, so you spend. You feel tired, so you quit early. You feel bored, so you scroll. Each action brings temporary relief and long-term damage. Wealth is built by doing what is uncomfortable now so life can be comfortable later. Poverty is reinforced by doing what is comfortable now and paying for it later. Ask yourself this question honestly. What comforts are costing you your future? Is it entertainment replacing education? Is it rest replacing effort? Is it pleasure replacing progress? Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the ability to say no today so you can say yes tomorrow. It is the decision to endure small discomforts instead of lifelong frustration. Here is the principle you must remember. Comfort is addictive. Discipline is liberating. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you strengthen your identity. And identity shapes destiny. The uncomfortable choice to save instead of spend, to study instead of escape, to work instead of wait. Those choices do not feel heroic. They feel boring, repetitive, unseen. But they are powerful because discipline compounds. And once you stop numbing yourself with comfort, something changes. You begin to see money differently, not as something to consume, but as something to plant. And that is where the next principle begins. Imagine a farmer who eats every seed he owns. Tonight, he feels full, but next season, he starves. This is exactly how most people treat money. They see income as permission to consume, not as an opportunity to plant. They celebrate the harvest and forget the future. Jim Rohn often said that money is like seed. It can be consumed or it can be invested. But once eaten, it can never grow. Poor mindset spends first and hopes later. Wealth mindset plants first and waits. Look at how people talk about money. I deserve this. I worked hard. I will save when I earn more. This is one debt. Those statements feel fair, but fairness does not build wealth. Foresight does. Every dollar you receive carries a quiet question. Will you enjoy me once, or will you let me work for you many times? The tragedy is not spending money. The tragedy is spending your future. Lifestyle inflation is one of the most dangerous traps. Income increases, and expenses rise to meet it. New comfort replaces old discipline. And just like that, nothing changes. People chase higher income without changing how they treat money. So even when more arrives, it disappears. Think about this carefully. If you earn 10% more but save 0% more, your future remains the same. Wealth is not created by how much you make. It is created by how much you keep and how wisely you plant it. This does not require massive income. It requires intentional habits, saving before spending, investing before upgrading lifestyle, choosing growth over appearance. Ask yourself this honestly. Are you living off yesterday's harvest or planting for tomorrow's season? Because every purchase is a vote. A vote for comfort now or security later. A vote for image or independence. Here is the principle you must remember. If you keep eating your seeds, the future will never arrive. Planting does not feel exciting. It feels restrictive. It feels slow. But planting is how freedom is built quietly. A small amount invested consistently outgrows large amounts spent emotionally. Time rewards patience, and money obeys discipline. Once you see money as a seed, your priorities change. You stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, what future does this purchase support? And that question leads naturally to the next challenge, waiting. Because planting seeds requires patience, and patience requires the ability to delay applause. That is where the next principle begins. Most people think discipline is about delaying pleasure. But there is something even harder to delay. Applause, praise, feels good. Recognition feels validating. Being noticed feels like progress. And that is why applause can be more addictive than comfort. Jim Rohn often reminded us that success leaves clues. One of the clearest clues is this: real success is quiet for a long time. Poor mindset wants results quickly. But more than that, it wants to be seen trying. It wants likes before mastery, attention before value, validation before competence. We live in a world that rewards visibility more than substance. People announce plans before building skills. They chase audience before earning expertise. And when applause does not come, motivation collapses. This is why many people quit too early. Not because progress is not happening, but because it is not being recognized. Think of a stage performance. The audience applauds for 10 minutes, but the preparation took 10 years. What most people want is the clapping without the practice. Wealth is built in the background, in repetition, in boredom, in obscurity. The wealthy mindset understands this. It does not seek approval. It seeks progress. Delayed applause means working without witnesses, learning without compliments, improving without announcements. It means allowing your results to introduce you instead of your words. Ask yourself this question honestly. Are you building value or are you building an image? Because image fades quickly. Value compounds. Social media has distorted priorities. People compare chapters without reading the whole book. They measure themselves against highlight reels, and impatience grows. Here is the principle you must remember. Applause is a byproduct, not a strategy. When you chase applause, you become dependent on external motivation. When you delay it, you develop internal discipline. Delayed applause builds resilience. It builds confidence rooted in competence. It builds freedom from opinion. And one day, recognition arrives naturally. Not because you demanded it, but because your work earned it. But here is the deeper truth. Applause does not pay bills. Value does, which leads directly to the next principle. If you want lasting wealth, you must stop selling your time and start increasing your value. That is where the next principle begins. Everyone has the same 24 hours, but not everyone is paid the same for them. The difference is value. Most people are taught to trade time for money. Show up, stay busy, wait for a raise. And for a while, this works. But time has a ceiling. There are only so many hours you can sell. Jim Rohn taught that income rarely grows by demand. It grows by becoming more valuable. Poor mindset asks, how many hours did I work? Wealth mindset asks, how much value did I create? If you did ours, this is why some people earn more in 1 hour than others earn in a week. Not because their time is worth more, but because their skills are. Look at the modern world. AI can replace tasks, Automation can replace routines, but value is harder to replace. Problem solving, communication, leadership, creativity. These are forms of leverage. If your income depends entirely on your presence, your freedom is limited. If your income depends on your value, your potential expands. Many people stay poor because they perfect effort instead of upgrading skills. They work harder at the same level. They stay busy without becoming better, and busy feels productive. But busy without growth is stagnation. Ask yourself this honestly. If you stopped working tomorrow, what value would continue working for you? Skills can travel. Skills can compound. Skills can scale. Time cannot. Here is the principle you must remember. You will never be paid more than the value you bring to the marketplace. This is not unfair. It is reality. The good news is that value is buildable. You are not stuck with what you know today. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every problem you learn to solve, these are deposits into your value account, and value pays dividends. When you focus on value, confidence grows naturally. Not because you feel special, but because you are useful. And usefulness is always rewarded. But value must be focused. Scattered effort builds little. That is why the next principle is critical. You do not need 10 skills. You need one that you master deeply. That is where the next principle begins. Most people are not underskilled. They are underfocused. They start one thing, then another, then another. Each time with excitement, each time without depth. Jim Rohn often said that success is not doing extraordinary things, but doing ordinary things extraordinarily well. Yet poor mindset believes more options mean more opportunity. So attention gets scattered. Progress slows. Think of skill building like digging a well. If you dig 10 shallow holes, you find no water. If you dig one deep enough, water rises naturally. High-income skills are built through depth, not variety. In today's world, distraction is disguised as opportunity. New tools, new platforms, new trends. People chase them all. They want fast results without long commitment. So they stay beginners everywhere. Wealthy mindset chooses one skill and commits. Sales, writing, coding, design, leadership. Not forever, but long enough to matter. Ask yourself this honestly. If you dedicated 2 years to mastering one valuable skill, how different would your life look? Most people never find out because they quit too early. Skill mastery feels slow at first. There is little feedback, little recognition, little reward. But underneath, something is forming. Competence, confidence, leverage. And leverage changes income. When you master one skill, doors open. People trust you. Opportunities follow. Not because you are lucky, but because you are useful at a high level. Here is the principle you must remember. Depth creates income. Distraction destroys it. You do not need to chase every opportunity. You need to become excellent at one. Once that foundation is built, expansion becomes easier. But without foundation, everything collapses. Focus is not limitation. It is power. And once you develop a valuable skill, another question becomes critical. Where are you taking it? Because skill without direction can still lead nowhere. That is why the next principle matters. Thinking beyond today. Thinking in years, not weeks. That is where the next principle begins. Most people live inside the next 30 days. The next bill, the next paycheck, the next weekend. And because their thinking is short-term, their results remain small. Jim Rohn taught that success is predictable. Not because life is simple, but because direction matters more than speed. If you do not know where you are going, effort only makes you tired. Poor mindset asks, what do I need to survive this month? Wealth mindset asks, who do I need to become in 5 years? That single question changes everything. When you think in 5 years, your daily decisions change. You stop chasing quick wins. You stop panicking over small setbacks. You stop trading long-term freedom for short-term relief. Think about your career. If you choose based only on immediate income, you may sacrifice growth. If you choose based on learning and skill building, income follows later. Short-term thinking feels responsible. Long-term thinking feels risky. But the opposite is true. Living without a long-term vision is the greatest risk of all. People say, I don't know where I'll be in 5 years. That is not honesty. That is avoidance. You do not need certainty. You need direction. Think of your life like a ship. Without a destination, any wind feels like progress. But in reality, you are drifting. A 5-year vision is not a prediction. It is a filter. It filters what you say yes to. It filters what you tolerate. It filters how you spend your time, money, and energy. Ask yourself this question honestly. If nothing changes, where will you be in 5 years? The answer to that question should make you uncomfortable, because discomfort creates clarity. Here's the principle you must remember. You do not create the future by hoping. You create it by aligning today with tomorrow. Acting today does not mean massive action. It means consistent action. Small steps taken daily in the right direction outperform bursts of effort without direction. When your vision is clear, patience becomes easier, discipline becomes logical, sacrifice becomes meaningful, and once you commit to a long-term direction, something else becomes critical. Your environment. Because even the clearest vision will collapse in the wrong surroundings. That is where the next principle begins. You do not rise or fall by accident. You drift in the direction of your environment. Jim Rohn famously said that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Not because those people control us, but because standards are contagious. Your environment shapes what feels normal, and what feels normal shapes your behavior. Poor mindset often lives in a comfortable cage. There are no bars, no locks, just familiar voices repeating familiar limits. Don't try that. That's unrealistic. Be grateful for what you have. People like us don't do those things. These words are rarely spoken with malice. They are spoken with fear, but fear spreads quietly. Look at your surroundings, your conversations, your daily inputs. Are they expanding you or shrinking you? The modern environment is not just physical, it is digital. What you watch, what you scroll, what you listen to, if your environment is filled with complaint, comparison, and distraction, discipline becomes harder. Not because you are weak, but because you are swimming against the current. Wealthy mindset is intentional about environment. Not arrogant, intentional. It seeks ladders instead of cages. A ladder environment challenges you. It raises expectations. It exposes you to higher standards. It makes discipline feel normal instead of extreme. This does not mean abandoning everyone in your life. It means choosing influence wisely. You can love people without living by their limitations. Ask yourself this question honestly. Who or what is shaping your standards right now? Because standards decide behavior, and behavior compounds. If your environment excuses laziness, you will struggle to stay disciplined. If your environment celebrates growth, effort becomes natural. Here is the principle you must remember. You cannot build an extraordinary life in an ordinary environment. Change does not begin with confrontation. It begins with curation. Curate what you consume. Curate who you listen to. Curate where you spend your time. When your environment changes, your identity has room to grow. And once your standards rise, something else becomes important. Respect, not from others, from yourself. That is where the next principle begins. Most people say they want more money, but very few are willing to look closely at the money they already have. This is not a budgeting problem. It is a self-respect problem. Jim Rohn taught that awareness precedes change. If you do not know where you are, you cannot decide where to go. Poor mindset avoids numbers. It avoids statements. It avoids reality. Not because the numbers are confusing, but because they are revealing. Looking at your finances forces honesty. And honesty is uncomfortable. People say, I roughly know where my money goes. Roughly is where discipline goes to die. We would never drive a car without looking at the dashboard. Yet millions live their financial lives blindfolded. Tracking money is not about control. It is about clarity. Clarity removes fear. Vagueness creates it. When you track your money, patterns appear. Emotional spending, impulse decisions, unnecessary leaks, and with patterns comes power. You cannot fix what you refuse to measure. You cannot respect what you ignore. Tracking money is an act of maturity. It says, I care enough about my future to face the truth today. Look at your habits. Do you check your phone more often than your finances? That tells a story. Self-respect grows when actions align with goals, and tracking is alignment in action. Here is the principle you must remember. What you track, you improve. What you avoid controls you. This does not require perfection. It requires consistency. 5 minutes a day. Awareness without judgment. Facts without excuses. When you know your numbers, decisions become calmer. Choices become intentional. Progress becomes visible. And something unexpected happens. Confidence grows. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that comes from knowing where you stand. Once you can see clearly, change becomes possible. And once change begins, momentum builds. But awareness alone is not enough. You need a starting point, a reset, a moment where new habits replace old ones. That is where the next principle begins. Most people do not fail because they never start. They fail because they mistake a reset for a solution. A new week begins. Motivation rises. Promises are made. 7 days of focus. 7 days of discipline. 7 days of hope. And then life returns. Jim Rohn taught that motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. A reset can spark change, but it cannot sustain it. Poor mindset loves fresh starts. New notebooks, new plans, new challenges. But it avoids systems because systems require patience. They require repetition. They require structure. A 7-day reset is powerful when used correctly. It creates awareness. It interrupts old patterns. It proves that change is possible. But it is not a lifestyle. Think of a reset like striking a match. It creates light instantly. But without fuel, it fades. The mistake most people make is restarting instead of continuing. They reset again and again, hoping the next time will feel different. But change does not come from restarting. It comes from replacing old habits with new ones. Replacing emotion-driven decisions with planned behavior. Ask yourself this honestly. How many times have you started over? If starting over worked, you would already be free. Wealthy mindset uses a reset as a starting signal, not a finish line. It asks, what comes after the 7 days? Because discipline is built in ordinary days. Days without excitement. Days without motivation. Here is the principle you must remember. Short-term discipline without long-term structure always collapses. The goal of a reset is not intensity, it is alignment. Alignment between who you are becoming and what you do daily. A simple system beats heroic effort every time. Wake up, review priorities, work on one skill, track money, repeat. Nothing dramatic, nothing impressive, just consistent. When behavior becomes automatic, willpower becomes irrelevant. And that is the real transformation. But even systems have limits because systems work only when identity supports them. You can follow a plan temporarily, but you live out who you believe you are. That is why the final principle matters most. It is not about habits. It is not about money. It is about becoming the person who can handle wealth when it arrives. That is where the final principle begins. Money does not change people. It reveals them. That is why so many people lose what they gain. The result arrives before the identity is ready. Jim Rohn taught a powerful truth. Do not wish for more money. Wish to become more, because income never exceeds identity for long. You can give someone wealth, but if they have not developed discipline, awareness, and responsibility, that wealth becomes a burden. This is why. The final principle is not about strategy. It is about transformation, becoming the kind of person who can handle wealth. Think of money like water. It always flows to the lowest level of discipline, and it never stays above it. If your habits are weak, money leaks. If your standards are low, money escapes. If your identity is small, money feels overwhelming. The goal is not to chase money. The goal is to expand who you are. This is where 30 days matter. Not as a challenge, not as a burst of motivation, but as a deliberate identity shift. For 30 days, you choose discipline over comfort. You choose awareness over avoidance. You choose growth over excuses. You wake up with intention. You track your actions. You invest in your skills. You control your emotions. You protect your environment. Nothing extreme, nothing dramatic, but everything consistent. Because identity is shaped by what you repeatedly do when no one is watching. After 30 days, something changes. Not your bank account, your standards. And standards change decisions. Decisions change habits. Habits change destiny. Ask yourself this question honestly. If money arrived in your life tomorrow, would you be able to keep it? Or would it expose weaknesses you have been avoiding? Here is the final principle you must remember. Wealth is not something you get. It is something you grow into. When you become disciplined, money respects you. When you become valuable, money follows you. When you become responsible, money stays with you. This journey is not easy, but it is simple. And simplicity repeated daily creates power. If this message challenged you, that is a good sign. It means you are ready. Ready to stop repeating old stories. Ready to raise your standards. Ready to become more than you are today. Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together.